You're in the nest. Nate Wangler, Luke Schrock, Tim McTighe, and sophomore track star Morgan Luedy joining us on the Nest Hotline in just a little bit. We've got a full show ahead of us today, so make sure you stick with us. But first, our dunce of the day didn't follow through today. Ian is not dressed. He will be dressed tomorrow. I am beyond disappointed.
Did he forget, or was he just not able to straighten his hair? What happened?
Straighten his hair. He couldn't find someone. I think personally, I think he doesn't want to wear the Michigan hockey jersey. I think that's his hesitation. I don't think he can put up with that embarrassment or wearing a jersey from a better hockey program. But
well, he seems like a guy that just is very obsessed with his hair. He has good hair. Let's be honest, guys.
Yeah,
it is very
It might
good.
just be a difficult thing to do. I mean,
I know it'd be difficult for me.
I like the short, personally.
You like the short? I loved the long curly, man. It looked like Ian. It was his look,
It looks tight. It looks tight when he's short. I don't know.
it does actually.
I don't know. All right. Lots to get to, but first, it's a great day to be Golden Eagle. Let's get your minute recap.
So the women's basketball team dropped a trio of games, one against Madonna 57-52, heartbreaker in that one. Michigan Dearborn 89-64 at Mull Arena. Concordia 63-47 in Ann Arbor. The men's team clinched a share of the WAC title with a 76-57 win in Ann Arbor against Concordia. The women's track team and the men's track team were both at the Grand Valley State Big Meet, where the women set 10 PRs, 6 national qualifiers, and Morgan Luedy, who we're going to talk to in a bit, broke the school record for the 400 meter with a 57-67. Men's track had 9 PRs. Joey DeBoer and Colin DeYoung earned auto qualifiers, which Joey qualified in the 1 mile and the 800 meters, Colin in the 1 mile and the 3K. The women's team came back from a 9-0 sweep by Calvin to sweep Olivet College 9-0 at home. And then the men's team lost a heartbreaker to Huntington 5-4 that came down to the final 2 matches that were both lost 2-0.
We know what our bread and butter is here at Cornerstone. It's basketball. However, maybe one of the programs we don't talk about nearly enough, but a team we should be talking about more, a team that has decorated walls here at Cornerstone, is the track and field team. I want you to imagine if you only had 23 years to live. That's it. Could you be something special? Could you overcome adversity? Would you look back at your life and go, yeah, I did all the things I needed to do. I made a difference. I lived the life I wanted to live. If you have 80 plus years to live, I don't necessarily feel bad. If you have 80 plus years, you can figure it out in that time. But if you only had 23 years, I don't know. A lot of people can't overcome dysfunction for 30, 40 years, let alone 23. Head coach Rod Wortley of the track and field team, he attended CU, graduated in 88, he ran, he set records, and then he left and the school said, yeah, no more running. Program went into his dark ages. In other words, it stopped altogether. Then Wortley came back, restarted the program. I was born in 1996. And, I tend to think if he retired today, actually I don't think there's any doubt about this, he would be the most decorated coach at Cornerstone by a mile, potentially in most of West Michigan. Consider this for me. 40 consecutive NAIA National Indoor and Outdoor National Championships, 17 in cross country. 100 Golden Eagle athletes have earned All-American honors 269 times, along with over 50 All-America Scholar athletes. At the conference level, his athletes have won 217 WAC event titles and 8 team championships. Rarely do they get the spotlight, but if I'm being completely honest with myself, it's hard to spotlight just one person because it isn't about the individual. In this program, it's about the family, the culture, and the buy-in. Go figure. Felt like we just got done talking about this. I talked to Rod Wortley last year about what his best sales pitch is for prospective athletes coming in, and he had this to say. Whether you're the best team or last in the door, the communal goal stays the same: win national championships. I can't explain the winning formula, but here to talk to us about it is sophomore track star Morgan Luedy, joining us here on the Nest Hotline. So let me start with your personal accomplishments. So you broke the school record with your time in the 400 meter of 57.69. Maybe a little bit frustrating that you didn't officially qualify for nationals, but how special of a moment was that for you to break that record?
It was very special for me, one, because the person who had it before is my very good friend, Makayla Clum, and she's actually there at the finish line. I felt like I ran a really good race, but I didn't know if it was that good, because coming into the season before, my PR was only 59 flat. So it was quite the improvement, but super excited to get a good time in and hopefully at conference get an even better time.
Did you know coming into the race the record that you had to beat? Did you know the time in mind, or was that just kind of another race for you?
It was kind of just another race. I was really excited coming off of the Indiana meet. I barely hit Provo because the conversions for a banked 200 track was exactly the same time that I ran, so I did beat Indiana. I wasn't 100% sure what A standard was for Grand Valley, but I knew that I was in a good heat that was competitive, and just to go out there and kind of prove the work that I've put in and to try to get a good time.
So going into the 400 at Grand Valley, what was your race strategy going into the race?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
What was your strategy going into the 400 at the Big Meet this weekend?
I felt really fresh. The only thing I did before was long jump, so I had a lot of time to prep, and I knew that the Big Meet, we had some big goals in mind, but really just to get some practice done before conference and then, keep working for the nationals that's coming up soon.
My record to class is 56.72, so you're going to have to beat me because I wake up at least 10 minutes before class every day, so that's my time. So I think I got you beat by a little bit.
All right, well, I'll try to get that.
All right. So let me shift to this. We heard Coach Wortley a little earlier talk about the culture, the family that track and field has become over his tenure, about how he takes decent athletes and turns them into national champions, and it shows. I mean, just this past weekend, 6 national qualifiers in the 2-day Big Meet, 19 personal records. I mean, I can't even go 2 minutes without getting some sort of update about your guys' success and how well you're doing. What is it that makes this program so successful from being within the team?
Yeah, I really think it's just our passion for the sport. You gotta be a little crazy to love running this much, and it's not a really fun thing to train for every day, but training with the same people every day and just having each other to push each other, it's a great feeling to have. I think that our team unity compared to other schools is great because our team isn't as big as their teams. We really have that personal relationship with each other, and it's just so cool to work out and see your other teammates, maybe not in your event group, kill a workout and be there for them when they hit a PR. Yeah. Does
that family environment really help elevate even the worst? I wouldn't say the worst, because what Coach Wortley said, he basically said, whether you're the best on the team or whether you're last in the door, everyone is vital in our pursuit of going to nationals. Do you feel like that family environment really elevates everyone's play?
For sure. We always have at track camp the seniors do a speech, and some of them will talk about national trips and stuff, but every single one of them will talk about memories that they've made with some of their best friends on this team. And I think that being on this team, you do make the best friends that you'll ever have because you spend so much time with them and you go through the worst days, the best days, and they see you not just at competition, but when you're training and you're pushing yourself so hard and they're right next to you doing the same thing.
So you mentioned the training aspect of things. Is there any one particular person that comes to mind that pushes you the most or helps you train the best when it comes to going into meet day?
That's a good question. I really appreciate my long sprint girls. I think that we have some of the hardest workouts, and we always do them together. So just like growing through those events, I think that they help push me and believe in me the most. But really, I know Coach Andy hasn't been here very long, but him and Q have really been people who have pushed me and encouraged all of us to just give it all we got.
Morgan, thank you for joining us on the Nest Hotline. Any new records we should keep our eye out for?
Well, hopefully I'll break it again.
Fair enough. All right, Morgan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, when we come back, talking about MLB rule changes and stuff the league needs to do or risk becoming obsolete. Also, the Pelicans sabotaging the Lakers. If you haven't heard this story, you're going to want to hear it, as well as NBA All-Star lineups and a whole lot more. Make sure you keep it locked. You're inside the Nest.
What's going on, everybody? Nate Wangler from the Nest Podcast, and listen, if you like professional sports and you love Cornerstone Sports, you're going to love what we have to offer on our podcast. Interviews, guest speakers, we break it all down for you. Every single top story from either around the community or around the nation. If you want to listen, make sure you subscribe at The Nest Podcast at YouTube. Again, that's The Nest Podcast, or on Twitter at The Nest GR. We're coming at you with a bunch of new content. You're not going to want to miss it.
There are a ton of things that I don't understand in life. I'm a very observant person sometimes. Call it a blessing, call it a curse. Either way, here's three of the big ones. Number one, why do people tailgate me when it's an ice rink outside? What does that accomplish? If I stop, you're going into my bumper. Please give me a little bit of room. We both can avoid having to call the cops. Number two, why does the Cornerstone cafeteria always manage to run out of bagels when I come? Every single time. And number three, why the MLB won't make changes to attract fans outside of their little, white bread country club that they've developed over hundreds of years. Let me make one thing very clear. Baseball is the most insular sport in America. Some would say they're almost allergic to change. Unlike the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, it's very hard to come by baseball making any sort of significant changes. It took years and years of old men crying about ruining the game before the umps finally went, hey man, with all this high-tech mumbo-jumbo people are watching the games on, we need review. Otherwise, we're going to get run out of the city every time we make a bad call. Instead of subtle nudges to the game pushing it in the right direction, rule changes in baseball are like amending the Constitution. It doesn't happen unless enough old guys can finally get out of their comfort zone and agree to make a change. So here on the Nest, we decided to go through a couple of these rule changes that Tim, Luke, and I think should really change. Reasons why they should change, or the reasons why they shouldn't change. In my mind, here's the top four. Number 4, allowing 2 sport draftees to sign major league contracts. Listen, for every Joe Mauer that chooses baseball, there's a Kyler Murray or a Tom Brady that does not. One way to bring more popularity to the sport, simple, guys. Bring in more popular athletes.
And I agree. You know, Kyler Murray, he's one of those. You're right. He's a two-sport athlete. He's very athletic. He loves both games. But Kyler Murray is looking towards that big contract right away. He's looking for that money right away. And I understand his thinking, because if there's many levels to minor league baseball, if you get injured throughout the way, you lose your chance at millions. And in that process, you don't get paid that much. It's practically next to nothing compared to most professions. So when you look at the popular opinion in the NFL, you get the money right away, the big contract, a lot of top drafted people become franchise faces. We've seen plenty of that in the low budget teams in the last few years. So I'm not surprised Kyler Murray went this direction at all.
It's odd for me to think that someone would be able to play professionally two sports. Why not give it a try?
Yeah.
Why not give it a try? Why not see if you can work something out to invite more talent, more excitement, more hype to the game, as opposed to saying, listen, dude, it's baseball or bust, man. You know what I mean? And you hear all these people coming out, all the baseball fans who are only baseball fans. Because I honestly think baseball is the one sport where there are so many baseball-only fans as opposed to a lot of other sports.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, listen, dude, you're a bum, you're this, you're that for not playing baseball. You know what? Let Kyler Murray do both. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure he can do both at a better level than most of the other athletes around the sport can.
And you realize how much popularity that conversation brought to both sports? In the MLB, that's practically all they were talking about for I would say at least a good 3 weeks, from what I've seen. You think about it this way: if you want the MLB to be more popular, you bring the popular faces that can actually do it, like Kyler Murray's, and you put him in a situation where he can play in the MLB. And so when you think about it this way, if you want the MLB to be more popular, you allow the Kyler Murrays of the world to play in both sports.
Yeah, it's crazy how all of this has just blew up the internet, because, you know, I would personally argue that baseball is not necessarily in a good spot right now, and I think we can all say that. I think the NFL and the NBA completely trump baseball, and I mean, baseball is my favorite sport. It always has been, but you know, with a lot of young generations looking more up to LeBron James and Tom Brady, you know, it can surely kind of bury baseball a little bit. And, you know, not only does it have an attendance problem, but there also seems to be sort of an issue where, you know, it's just, a lot of people would say it's just a boring sport to watch. Like, you know, it's just pitch, pause, foul ball.
And that brings me into my next point. The next one, number 3 on our list, so that was number 4. Number 3 on our list, the 20-second pitch clock. They already have this in the minor leagues. I don't really need to comment on this one. Yes, and yes.
Yeah.
I am so sick and tired of watching a baseball game that doesn't end for 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
Why? Because the pitcher takes the ball, takes off his cap, wipes the dirt, kisses his hand, puts his hat back, brushes the mound, looks up, looks down, spits in his mitt, looks, sets
Takes
for
a
like
shower.
10 seconds, takes a shower, eats a steak, watches TV, and then throws ball for it.
Now, as a two-way player, I can attest to two different situations in this point. As a pitcher, I hate this rule. Why? Because there's strategy involved in your pace that you go to the rubber. If your batter hates the fact that you take your time and he's just jittery in the box, ready to throw the pitch, dude,
Right.
then that's strategy. As a fielder, I love it, because when you're waiting for your pitcher, all right, dude, come on now, get up there,
Yeah.
you don't fall asleep.
And the same goes for batters, too. I mean, batters sometimes are brutal. I mean,
Yeah.
they'll take 2 strikes, and then you'll see them step out, take their helmet off, look at their helmet, put it on, look at the girl in the crowd, step back in, do their
Adjust their batting gloves.
batting gloves, and
The
put it up.
Nomar Garcia Parra
yeah.
thing. You know,
and then
it's
they'll
like-
watch strike 3 go by. It's like, I love the pace of play rules because that keeps the action going. Because what is the biggest complaint? From anyone here, when you hear complaints about the MLB, what is the biggest complaint, bar none?
It's too long.
It's too long. It's too slow. And listen, while I love going to a baseball game and drinking a pop and watching the game, you can still speed it up a little bit without destroying what baseball completely is. Number 2 on our list, and these two really kind of go hand in hand, 3 batter minimum for pitchers, limit on mound visits. Mound visits are excruciating.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, some managers, it takes them 7 years just to walk out to the mound. And by the time that they get there, it's like, what do you talk about for that long?
Yeah.
What are we ordering tonight for dinner? What club, what bar are we going to after the game? What are you conversating with the guys out on the mound that long that we have to wait that long for you to finally get your keister back in the dugout?
Yeah.
Yep. In this case, I mean, a lot of it is just like strategy and very little actually about strategy and more of like getting them to calm down, probably some stuff they talked about in practice and in the bullpens going up to the game. And it's really, you're right, some of it gets a little ridiculous. Now, if you invite the whole team up there, that's probably a little bit more strategy, but there's a lot of empty words being said if you really think about things from a deeper concept.
Actually, there's a shared position for our number 1. So there's 2 number 1s in my mind. I'll talk about the first one. A single trade deadline. 1. Could you imagine if free agency in baseball was the same as free agency in the NBA? Ooh, headlines after headlines after headlines. People would see superstars moving around, and it would actually generate interest. Oh, and yes, less confusion. Something baseball could certainly use right about now.
People still won't shut up about Bryce Harper.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's not going to stop. But
Harper and Machado are just taking too long, I agree. But anyways,
part of me
it's too
says
long.
I just want him to sign already. You know, I mean, preferably I want him to sign with the Cubs, but you know, darn well it's not going to happen because the Cubs are wasting some of their cap space, and a right fielder I like to call Jason Hayward. But you know, going back to the whole issue, you know, can you imagine if the NFL had an unlimited challenge like rule, like where coaches could literally just throw out red flags? You know, do you realize how much longer the game would be? Like I feel like that's kind of what they're trying to do, is they're just trying to limit that.
Then what do challenge flags have to do?
No, I'm saying like
Yeah.
I'm just making an analogy.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
I'm not saying like
It'd be awful,
I'm
though.
just saying like imagine how much longer that game would be.
Right.
If you know, because I feel like that's what baseball is doing. Is that, you know, what is there, like 6 mound visits, 5 or 6 mound
It's brought down to 6 mound visits. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, a lot of, you know, especially back in the day, you know, when the game is close, when it's like a 2-1 game in the bottom of the 7th, constant back and forth manager and pitcher talk, and you know, the catcher always going to the mound, and you know, sometimes your fellow infielders come in and talk to you. Like it's like it can drag on so much.
Right.
And
the other, the shared number 1, the one that I think is my actual number one. Guys, begin to rewrite the unwritten rules in baseball. Let the guy celebrate. If a guy hits a home run, let him toss his bat without having a 98-mile-an-hour fastball at his temple the next time up. You want to know why baseball is so popular in places like Japan? They have music at the games. Mm-hmm. They have constant choreographed thing. They got fireworks. It's a show that just so happens to have a baseball game. When guys hit home runs in Japan, all of them have signature bat flips. Mm-hmm. Signature ways of celebrating, and that's what makes them so popular. But in the MLB, I remember when Jose Bautista hit that huge, he stood, watched it, and then tossed his bat. Yeah. Guys, he's had to overcome an entire career of dysfunction and crap in the city of Toronto. Yeah. And all of a sudden he hits that huge home run, and I forget who was pitching that night, to be completely honest.
I don't remember either.
Off the top of my head. But he goes into an interview after the game and goes, I don't think you should be doing that. I don't think you should be throwing a fastball over the heart of the plate.
Yeah.
Why don't you look at yourself before you start judging other guys about celebrating a home run that they've waited their entire career to do?
Oh, yeah.
Agreed.
It's crap
Once in a
baseball.
lifetime.
Well, think about it this way. Even at, like, say, the NEIA level, most guys aren't throwing 90 miles an hour. So even if you throw like an 80, 85 mile an hour fastball at a guy's head, that's still very dangerous. Like, you could
It's really
die.
dangerous.
You could very well die, especially with like the 90, 95, 98.
Yeah.
You'll die instantly.
And just for celebrating.
Yeah.
In the NFL,
ridiculous.
they have choreographed celebrations now. People are like,
Yeah.
"This is awesome." They're hilarious.
Yeah.
The bowling pins and all that other stuff. It's great. It's funny. There used to be a time in the NFL where if you did that stuff, you got your head taken off the next play.
Oh, yeah.
But we're getting older.
Do you realize what I do when I'm hitting live bullpens downstairs at Central? I was doing this the other day. I hit a bomb off a guy. And what did I do? It may not have went out in real life. I still bat flipped the thing. Because it's how you mess around with people. It is so emerged in baseball culture. Whenever I follow a bunch of different accounts on Instagram. Baseball has a culture, man. It is
Oh, yeah.
such a culture.
Right.
And all these videos, I see these recruits, huge bomb over a fence. Next thing you know, big old bat flip. It's a part of the culture. Pitchers just have to realize that that's how it is. And if you put, well, like you said, a fastball over the plate, right at belt high, that's gone
Yeah.
Yeah.
in any league.
And Cody Clemens, Roger Clemens' kid, played for the Whitecaps last year. I remember talking to, well, I wasn't me who was talking to him. It was Dan Hasty. I was standing behind him. But one of the questions he asked, because Cody was renowned for bat flips at Texas, and he put out some pretty in-your-face ones. And Dan Hasty's like, well, are we ever going to see that from you? And he goes, no, probably not. I don't want to get a fastball at my head. Why? So we can do it at college, but an MLB pitcher can't handle getting a home run hit off of him?
Yeah.
Dude, you're paid multi-million dollars to not throw that fastball over the meat of the plate.
Yeah.
That's your job.
Part of it's their fault.
Well, here's another one. Cody Clemens, I think it was like a playoff game. I don't remember which part, but he showed a hook 'em to the bench as he ran by. Do you realize what kind of backlash that would get in like the minor league, major league levels?
I think there's still a place. There's a time and a place to show to celebrate. You shouldn't showboat. I'm not all about screaming in someone's face. I think if you do that, I think if I was the other team, I think I'd be okay with a fastball at the head because you deserve it at that point for running past our bench and showing us up.
Yep.
But I mean, a bat flip, a jumping up and down, a Gibson fist pump around a pointing up, a Sammy Sosa, I'm okay with that. Let players bring out a little bit of personality as opposed to just being interchangeable pieces. No one wants to see that.
Yeah, I think as long as it's not really threatening anyone, like, who cares, Like, when Kyle Schwarber, I remember the wild card game a couple of years ago against the Pittsburgh Pirates, when Kyle Schwarber hit that bomb into the Allegheny River, he just he didn't, flip it up, but he kind of just flipped it down. It felt so good to hit that because not only was that a bomb, it was, completely out of the park, but, it was pretty much the deciding factor in the entire game. And in a playoff game, that's huge. And, a regular season game from earlier this season when David Bodie hit a grand slam dead center field to beat the Nationals, that was amazing to see. And, I didn't care at that point what he was doing because the game's over. I mean, there's nothing you can do about
the
it.
players be themselves. All right, when we come back, how the Pelicans effectively sabotaged the Lakers in one of the biggest sports soap operas this year has seen so far. You're not going to want to miss the story. Ian Kaufman joining us on the podcast to talk about Kaufman's Corner and news around the league. All that and more coming up next. Keep it locked. You're inside the Nest. And
What's going on, everybody? Nate Wangler from the Nest Podcast, and listen, if you like professional sports and you love Cornerstone Sports, you're going to love what we have to offer on our podcast. Interviews, guest speakers, we break it all down for you every single top story from either around the community or around the nation. If you want to listen, make sure you subscribe at The Nest Podcast at YouTube. Again, that's The Nest Podcast, or on Twitter at The Nest GR. We're coming at you with a bunch of new content. You're not going to want to miss it.
We're back here on The Nest. Now joining us in the studio, Ian Kaufman, to talk about the association. So let's send it over to Kaufman's Corner for 2 minutes around the association.
Today, I think that someone needs a little more recognition than what they have been getting. Paul George has been having an MVP caliber season that is very much shadowed by James Harden's unbelievable night after unbelievable night. James Harden is leading the league in scoring. I'm sure everyone's known that because he's scored 40 points in many, many games and even 60 points this season. However, Paul George over the last 15 games has been averaging 32.3 points per game, 7.8 rebounds per game, 4.1 assists per game, 2.7 steals per game, and shooting 46% shooting field goals and three-point land. So he's shooting 46% from both places. Oh, and by the way, the Thunder are 11-4. So what I'm saying is, James Harden is leading the MVP race right now. If the season ended today, James Harden would win. However, it is clear to me that Giannis and now Paul George need to be added to the discussion because, wow, Paul George is having an amazing year. In the season stats, he's scoring 28 points per game, assisting 4 times a game, and having 8 rebounds per game, all of which are career highs. This guy is playing at an all-time high, and his stats aren't that different from Harden's. Harden is leading the league for points scored this season at 1,900, followed by Paul George. Even many might be surprised by that stat, but James Harden is less than 400 points total this season away from Harden. Despite Paul George not being in the news, not being on SportsCenter talk show hosts talking about him, he's still having an unbelievable year. Now, points per game leaders. Harden's at number 1 with 36.6 points per game. But Paul George is there in the middle at 4th, averaging 28.3 points. Paul George also leads the league in steals total and steals per game. He is tied with teammate Russell Westbrook. So not only has he exploded on the scene as an offensive player, but defensively, he continues to shine on the defensive end. Something Harden has never been able to do.
So let me put it this way. And I'm not going to make a whole lot of friends by saying this. James Harden, in my mind, is one of the most wildly overrated players in the entire NBA. You do realize his three-point shooting percentage is 37.5%, right?
Yeah.
You do realize one of the reasons why he scores so many points is because the Rockets play iso ball.
Yep.
They all stand around and they're like, let's watch this pretty little step back by James Harden, and maybe we just end up winning the game at the end.
Right.
You do realize Harden's assist numbers are nowhere within the ballpark of Paul George.
Mm-hmm.
You do realize his rebounding numbers are nowhere within the ballpark of Paul George. James Harden is one of the most prolific scorers maybe in the history of the NBA. But that essentially is all the beard is good for. And I was a little bit hard on Paul George. You know, I said straight up, I go, he shouldn't be a starter. I think Anthony Davis should be a starter in the All-Star game over Paul George. But as of recently, the way he's been playing and the way the Oklahoma City Thunder have been playing, Paul George might be the saving grace for a guy like Russell Westbrook, because they are a special team with him in the lineup, and you're starting to see this relationship flourish between the two.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason that he did come back, is because he kind of got a glimpse to see what they could have in Oklahoma City if he continued to play there. I tend to disagree with what you're saying about the All-Star. It's just hard when you have such a talented NBA.
Yeah.
There are so many players that you look at in the NBA right now, and you're like, there's a Hall of Famer, there's a Hall of Famer, there's a Hall of Famer.
And I was talking to Tim about this earlier. He's like, oh, the West is just so much better than the East. Okay, let me put it this way. I think the West is better than the East.
Yeah, I don't think there's a question.
There's any doubt about that.
Right.
But the minute LeBron James left the East, you start to see teams form and stars emerge from the Eastern Conference, and you go, whoa, maybe they do have a lot of stars to offer.
It's not the East from a couple years ago we're seeing.
No.
Where it's LeBron and everyone else. It's like, okay, now you have the Bucks.
Yeah.
Okay, now you have the Raptors. Okay, that's a pretty
The Sixers.
solid team. Sixers.
They're turning into
Now you have
a
Boston.
machine.
All of these players who once played in the West are going to the East, and teams are looking pretty solid, as opposed to a couple years ago, like I said, was LeBron and company.
Another reason why I love the new All-Star format, the picking teams and everything.
Yeah.
I think Giannis got smoked in that area, by the way, and we'll touch on that coming up in our talk about the All-Star game. But I wanted to shift gears to this. So first, I have to admit, on the last podcast, I was a little hard on the Lakers. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Clutch Sports and LeBron's camp had a big part in creating the disastrous mess that we see the Lakers are today. So while they're not necessarily innocent in the grand scheme of things, I wouldn't say they're responsible. And the complete and utter mess the Lakers have become. So who is responsible? Well, according to my sources, Dell Demps never actually agreed to trade AD at any point to the Lakers. Huh, okay, you don't say. Rather, in revenge for the Lakers tampering. You remember that, right? The $50,000 fine or whatever that was. Demps continued negotiations, published them publicly, right? That wasn't the Lakers that were leaking that information. That was the Pelicans. And they did it to embarrass and shame the young players on the Lakers roster, and then promptly denied trading AD to leave a young Lakers team feeling like they're dispensable and that there isn't much to play for in this organization because they're not going to be on the team very long anyway. And LeBron has now accumulated this mess. Guys, they gave up nearly 150 points last night. It was brutal. The NBA, in my mind, has officially reached a level of pettiness I didn't think it could. And I think Luke Walton, if he isn't already, is on his way out the door. This is one of the most sticky situations I've ever seen, but it's part of doing the LeBron thing if you're in the NBA.
Right, and Luke, I think he's been on that front porch type deal where he's on his way out, but he's not quite gone. I think if he does a good job in the playoffs, if the Lakers make it, if LeBron can stay healthy, and that team can perform, and he does well, which will be in part from LeBron James. I don't think it's particularly going to be his. I don't think he's particularly going to be in need of all the praise because they do have the greatest basketball player in the NBA right now. But if he does well, I don't see him leaving after this season. That is my opinion.
It's just the most, when I look at this, it's the most undesirable coaching position in the entire NBA. They didn't make a deal. Guess who stepped up and said something? LeVar Ball. He said, get my boys out of town, or get my boy out of town so that we can go play in Phoenix. And he said, they don't know what they're doing. I tend to agree. They don't know what they're doing. They have no idea what they're doing. Magic Johnson has no control over the situation.
Right.
It's a big old mess in the city of LA. But meanwhile, the Clippers are striving just across the city. So,
I don't find what they did to be a bad deal. There was an all-star, an absolute superstar, stud, and Anthony Davis on the table. They didn't. The New Orleans Pelicans didn't say they were gonna trade him to the Lakers. But if you make an offer, we'll review it and get back to you. So what do? They make him a couple offers. Now, if that deal goes through, it's a big home run.
Right.
But their home run is this summer. People are looking
who,
to
the Lakers?
Yes. They're
I
looking
think
toward
the
the
home runs
summer.
on both sides.
I think they're looking toward the summer, though.
Right. But what, in LeBron's 16th year in the league, right, that groin injury that he had a little bit of, that was his first significant injury that he's ever had.
Right.
So people are going, oh, the narrative's changing. LeBron is human.
Right.
Turns out. Was another year on top. The guy's going to be 36 next year. Does that change things? In my mind, he's becoming an old man.
Other than the injury, I don't see any statistical reason why I would think LeBron's aging physically. He's had insane years the past 3 years, and he's been 30 plus for 6 years. So I don't think that he's going anywhere anytime soon unless an injury has something to do with that.
Should be interesting to see if they don't get an all-star this offseason. It'll be a slow, painful death to the legacy that is LeBron James. When we return, NBA All-Star lineups, who drafted who, did the King, who in my opinion is one of the best recruiters, best coach, best ambassadors in the league, and maybe league history outside of Jordan, have a purpose for his draft picks? Is there a bigger purpose outside of just getting talented guys to play the game? Giannis joked about it, but I tend to believe that maybe he has a point. That coming up in just a little bit. Keep it locked. You're in the Nest.
What's going on, everybody? Nate Wangler from the Nest Podcast, and listen, if you like professional sports and you love Cornerstone Sports, you're going to love what we have to offer on our podcast. Interviews, guest speakers, we break it all down for you. Every single top story from either around the community or around the nation. If you want to listen, make sure you subscribe at The Nest Podcast at YouTube. Again, that's The Nest Podcast, or on Twitter at The Nest GR. We're coming at you with a bunch of new content. You're not going to want to miss it.
And we welcome you back to the Nest. So NBA All-Star Weekend coming up soon. Giannis and LeBron, the captains from each respective conference. LeBron from the West, Giannis from the East, drafted their starters and bench for the All-Star game. In my opinion, LeBron won the draft. I think he won the draft pretty handily. But that's not what we're here to talk about. I wanted to focus on something maybe the media isn't telling you. In a world of talented athletes, there are things off the court that turn a talented basketball player like Giannis into an international superstar and legend, LeBron James. LeBron James is not simply just a good basketball player. Like Mike, he's a lot more than that. Part head coach, part trainer, part dad, part recruiter, part ambassador to every team that he's played on. It's my belief this draft for LeBron James was about more than just the game. Giannis is a talented basketball player. He's just there to play the game. But when Bron drafted Anthony Davis, Giannis had something to say that made me laugh, but also made me question a little bit if he had a point. Here it is.
With my first pick in the second round, I'm going with Anthony Davis.
You sure you want him to be your teammate?
I'm very sure of that.
Isn't that tampering?
No. Shots fired, and you're up.
Tampering rules does not apply on All-Star Weekend.
Go ahead, freak.
Maybe he's got a point. Let's just take a look at the guys he drafted, and then you tell me. Kevin Durant has the option. As talks about the Knicks, I would hope, despite his lust to be the man and make the money, he wouldn't make that decision for the sake of his legacy. Kevin Durant's always wanted to be LeBron James, but not quite LeBron James. Can't beat him, join him. Kyrie Irving. He made a phone call. Hey, Bron, sorry, man. Don't know what it takes to lead a young team. It's not as easy as it looks. Kind of sounds a little bit to me like a please take me back plea. Kawhi Leonard. Notably doesn't want to play with LeBron. But, sharing the court with someone is a powerful thing. We'll see what he decides to do afterwards. He did buy a house in L.A. It is his lifelong dream, Ian, as you mentioned, to play for the Lakers.
Right.
And he would have that possibility to do that. Now, people who are saying Kawhi doesn't want to play with LeBron, I don't remember the last time I actually heard Kawhi say anything.
Right, exactly.
So who knows
Let
what this
alone
guy's
comment
intentions are.
on
Right.
something as not needed as this. I'm sure
Right.
he would shrug off a question from the media that involved this in
Easily.
an instant.
Easily. And when you share the court with a guy on a team, it's a little bit different to get a feel than it is just asking questions from random reporters. James Harden. Score. You do realize LeBron's only winning championships if he's surrounded by good shooters. Kyrie Irving and a young Dwayne Wade. Maybe most notably, Anthony Davis. Hasn't said outright that he wants to play in LA, but as we well know, the NBA has been, and will always be about the players. Anthony Davis wants to be traded. He never said anything specifically about LA, but who knows, maybe behind the scenes that's a discussion that's being had. Because at the end of the day, as I said earlier, if LA does not get an all-star by the time this year's over, it's going to be a slow, painful death to the Kings' legacy. I think these draft picks by LeBron were about a lot more than simply just winning an all-star game.
I think we may, and hang in there with me, I think we may be reading a little too far into it. Because in my opinion, the All-Star Weekend, especially for the players, is about a whole lot of fun, hanging out with people you don't normally get to hang out with. Because all these guys are in a brotherhood. They play pickup in the summer because they're the greatest in the world.
Right.
And what better competition can you get?
Right.
2, the nightlife, the fun, the games, and 3 would be charity, doing things for the community, and giving back.
I like that, but The reason why I say, and I totally agree with you, it's a show, it's a spectacle.
Right.
I mean, Hollywood shows up in force for the NBA All-Star Game.
Exactly.
There's not a lot of things that every single celebrity will show up to besides maybe like the Grammys.
Exactly.
But they'll show up to the NBA All-Star Game. The reason why, and this was the reverse side of it, the reason why I think, look at the guys LeBron didn't draft and the guys that Giannis took. Steph Curry committed long-term to the Warriors. Joel Embiid not going anywhere. Paul George, this past offseason, had a chance to go to L.A., signed a massive contract with Oklahoma City. Giannis, well, clearly Giannis is not going to L.A. And Kemba Walker, not really an option on the table either. So, in my mind, it comes down to also the guys that LeBron didn't touch that might tell the bigger story.
Well, what about Dwayne Wade? You know, he mentioned in quote, "I'm taking my good buddy Dwayne Wade." I'm leaning more on Ian's side here because it is a spectacle. He was
a notable mention.
Yeah.
Him and Dirk were just kind of guys that were thrown into the game.
They weren't voted in.
Yeah.
Adam Silver made an exception for these two Hall of Famers to be in the last All-Star game.
Right.
Well, I mean, not just the fact that they're in the possibility of getting picked. I'm talking about, like, why didn't just LeBron say, okay, Giannis, you can go ahead and take him? Like, why would he do that? Like, I'm just saying that LeBron has some relationship with all these guys. He's friends with all of them. Or I should say most of them. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Everyone knows everyone.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm leaning more towards Ian's side because let's face it, guys. In most headlines, in some headlines, I should say, we read into it just a little bit too far.
Yeah,
That's just my side.
I think that in every All-Star weekend, there are pending contracts, there are upcoming free agencies, and I think it's no different from any other All-Star weekend, despite the fact that a giant name like Anthony Davis almost got traded, and all of these guys just happen to be free agents.
So you don't think there's any discussion that'll happen behind the scenes?
Oh, I think there always is, though. I'm saying this year's no exception.
Right.
I'm saying that I'm with you with there is a recruiting aspect,
Right.
but I think there always is.
Yeah, well, think about it this way.
There hasn't always been that LeBron crisis, though.
True.
There's always been I feel like a lack of star power in Cleveland.
Right.
There always has been. But LeBron James has a platform now to actually take active steps to get that All-Star. Because, again, if an All-Star doesn't come to L.A. this offseason, Kyle Kuzma's a great player. A couple other guys on that team will be great players, give him another couple of years. I don't know if LeBron's got a couple years to spare.
No.
In terms of trying to take down the Warriors and take down some of those other Western Conference teams.
Well, he's trying to hold it out a little bit. I mean, obviously his son is going to be possibly coming into the league in the
Oh,
next...
stop it. Stop. Stop it.
I
right
think it
now.
might happen.
And LaMelo Ball might be an NBA All-Star in the next 4 years. Okay? Stop it.
One, I'm telling you that straight up, you can reference this when it happens. I think LeBron will play against Bronny Jr., and I think LaMelo will be drafted in the early second round.
What are his 8th grade stats? Has anyone looked it up? I was a baller in 8th grade.
I was.
don't know like this. Have you watched his mixtape or his?
I didn't almost dunk, but I mean,
He can dunk
you know what a mixtape is, though.
off the backboard.
You know what a mixtape is, though.
Yeah,
I
it's
could take-
highlights.
You're right.
I can watch full games on YouTube.
I could take a mixtape of Gabe Merriweather, and he looks like the best dunker that college basketball has to offer. He's great. He's a great dunker. Don't get me wrong, but he's not going to be an NBA All-Star, and he's not LeBron James' son. But I don't know where I was going with that example. But
I think you'll see. I think you'll see Bronny a one and done if that is still a thing by the time he's in college. And I think he'll. I don't know if he'll play on the same team as LeBron James. That would be wild. But I do think that they will play against
he
each
hasn't
other.
even faced high schoolers yet, dude. The kids haven't gone through puberty yet. he hasn't had to face a close to 7-foot center. You know?
Oh yeah, he has. There's guys he's
Really?
playing against. There's guys
in
he's
8th grade.
well comparatively.
Right.
Comparatively.
Yeah, there's
So
some tall
he's,
dudes.
however tall, and compared to him, there are like 6'8". He's playing against the best talent in 8th grade in the nation.
They're still 8th
In
grade.
summer, throughout the entire year.
It's still 8th grade. I don't know. I hear what you're saying, and I hear other people mentioning that, but, you know, it's kind of like, you know, the whole Trevor Lawrence talk. Oh, he's going to be the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. Guys, let him be a college kid.
Did you see
Let
what he did to
Bronny-
Alabama?
I
season?
did see what he did to Alabama. I understand that.
Have you seen what Johnny Manziel did to teams when he was in college?
Nothing like this guy.
Yeah, no, Trevor Lawrence,
He's a foot taller,
yeah,
True.
weighs 50 pounds more,
pocket presence.
and can probably throw the
Yeah.
ball 25 yards past Johnny
Yeah.
Manziel.
Yeah,
True.
On his worst day.
True.
Yeah, he's unreal. But let's hop off the hype train. Let him be a college kid. Hop off the hype train. Let LaMelo be a high school kid. Hop off the hype train. Let Bronny be a middle school kid. Because everyone in the right mind is going to show, oh, his mixtape. Well, because he's LeBron James' kid. Right? Interesting. Anyways, so that'll do it for today's episode of the Nest Podcast. Again, coming up on our next episode on Thursday, we have a new Dunce of the Day. Predictions on the NBA All-Star Game. We will be selecting teams who we think is going to pull out the victory, and much more. Again, if you want to hear more of The Nest, make sure you subscribe at The Nest Podcast on YouTube or on Twitter at The Nest GR. Thank you for being inside The Nest. We'll see you next time.